Let's jump right in.
Okay, hell yeah. Welcome to the Sit in Your Shit podcast. You know who we are, and here we go. So, they don't know who we are. They don't give a fuck about us yet. It's okay, though. Today we're talking about astrology, and that happens to be my forte. Now, one of the things that I think, and the reason why I love astrology and why I'm excited for this episode is because astrologers traditionally followed a path called Hermeticism, or at least most did. Not all of them practice that way, but when you're looking in the Hellenistic period, that's when you start getting this idea of Hermeticism, which is just like a school of thought, a spiritual school of thought that arose during that period, right? So what the Hermeticists believed is that the path to God came through Gnosis, 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 meaning that by refining your thoughts, by refining your vision, and getting closer to aligning your thoughts with the thoughts of God, whatever that energy is, right? We're not putting a container on it. Um, the more you awaken the divine creator in yourself. Now, what does that really mean? It means that all of us are born with the ability to create. And that is a very, very abstract thought. A lot of people are like, oh, that means I can paint and I can dance and I can build a house and I can be a plumber and all of that shit. And yes, all of that is creation. But the gift of creation is so much bigger than people realize. Creation comes from having a conscious mind, right? So we're the only species we know of that can do that. That's part one. The conscious mind that can visualize what it wants to put out into the world, right? And then once it visualizes that, it has the means and the ability to strike that into action, right? So we're bound by laws, the laws of fate. We're bound by physics. We're bound by this world that we're in. We're bound by our social context. We're bound by a lot of different things. But all of this comes back to me in the sense of astrology is a means and a gateway to get in touch with how you were supposed to create and how you are most likely to get in alignment with God.
Mm, okay. So
There's a lot there.
love this.
Sorry.
Yes. And I'm just like, how did you even get here? How
That's
did that?
a,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a long way away. But that's the Hermetic path. That's the Hermetic path is this idea that, and the reason why I love it so much, and, I feel disconnected from a lot of the spiritual world because it's just about the divinity that already exists. But I don't find often that there are a lot of spiritualists who are working on consciously integrating those lessons into harder lessons, into harder material, into some deeper truths that have to be discovered, or just the discovery of your own biases. You know what I mean? And some people
Oh,
are
yeah.
just totally okay resting on that level, but that's just not the level I want to be on. I want to be challenged. I want to be motivated. I want to be wrong. I want to make mistakes. I want to get muddy and gritty with it. But I want it to always come from the absolute most informed place that I can come from, you know? And so I guess the reason why I don't think of it as a like I'm a medium or I'm a psychic or this or that is not because I disagree that those gifts are there. I know they're there, right? They're like you said, and I loved how you put this because this shifted my perspective on it. Is that to be human is to be psychic. So all of us have it there. It's just, are you creating the best material possible with the elements that you have been given? You see what I'm saying? Like, sure, I could tell someone I see that if I'm using my psychic gifts or if I'm using like past life regression or whatever modality people want to do, I could say, 4 life cycles ago, you were stuck here. And I use this a lot when I'm debating the concept of being psychic, but also on the flip side of it, there's an enhancement that can be done, right? Oh, 4 life cycles ago, you were really prone to people pleasing. Let's just keep it simple for the sake of it. So it's not even necessarily about doing anything spiritual, like getting a cleansing or like anything like that to remove this influence from you. It's just about now that I see it, now that I know it, now that I have a name for it, I can recognize when it's showing its face and I can do something about it. And that's the part where so many psychics miss it. That's where so many of them miss it. What do I do about it? I'm not.
I agree with that. I mean, because that's why it doesn't sit in your shit, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, I have the awareness now. Well, what am I going to do about it? Right. Even for me, like astrology was the only thing that was like more tangible for me while I'm like having this awareness of like these quote unquote psychic and medium gifts coming online. I was
Yeah.
trying to make sense of it because, like it hit me like yesterday where I was like, I'm living in a normal matrixy world. And then all this other stuff is like crumbling around me. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
And because I was gifted an astrology reading and they read my soul, and I'm like, what? Said I should be a professional diviner as a career. Literally, that took me a few years to even just absolutely wrap my head around. Here we are, though.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's just like recognizing how I have been following my astrology unconsciously by doing my shadow work, by
Yes.
like recognizing the things that, have, been influencing me my entire life. And
Yes.
so I'm like looking at astrology. I'm like, oh, why is it reading my life like this? Right. Which is still a little freaky, but same could be said about psychic medium gifts, blah, blah. But either way, though, you can absolutely use it as a tool to help you gain awareness. And some like astrology, there's so many layers and levels to it. So there's something that you can look at 5,000 times and maybe like one time, really, I get it now. I see it. Depending
Yeah.
on where you are and just like, understanding what am I working through right
Yeah. Well, and here on the highest level, on the highest, most divine level, we are the whole chart. We are every sign. We are everything. We contain every potential, right? What I've found is that the astrology, like, it's like I'm observing astrology and waiting for it to be untrue as well, right? And so that's the piece of it is like what I've found is that astrology is pretty shit for prediction. It's pretty garbo. Like there are just better means and ends to like get there. When I'm working with someone on astrology, it's really about doing that deeper work. And the problem is the language can be such a barrier to get there. So like astrology is by no means a requirement for going through a spiritual awakening. That's T. But what it is really good at is for someone who wants to follow the path of Gnosis, it is a very thought provoking way to ask yourself some very existential questions that you may not have had access to previously. So, I totally see what you're saying there. And I agree, like, we don't have to look at the astrology for the astrology to happen. Whatever's going to play out in your life is going to play out. But I'll be damned if it doesn't make me better at being creative as to what my possibilities are. You know what I mean? Because you start recognizing that gifts are very different from what people think they are. My ability to speak is my gift. My ability to have a clear mind on some days, the ADHD is a little demon, but like my ability to have a clear mind is a gift. My ability to ask questions is a gift. But so many people are just focused on creativity and gifts through this lens of like the traditional of, oh, this person's an amazing artist, writer, singer, etc. And they immediately think that they don't have these gifts. And sure, you might not have the technical expertise to get there, but like I guarantee you, every artist, every singer, every person that you've ever met in your life who's famous or noteworthy has gotten there by doing the damn work, you know? And so
Oh yeah.
I'm on some shit today. Sorry. You just need to cut me off because this will be the Moses show for like an hour.
I mean, I love it. I channel more than enough. You've heard me kind of go at it, in our off video, off camera type situations. I can go. So by all means, but
This is
speak
my
the truth,
moment. This is
Moses.
my episode, and I'm taking it.
There will be plenty about me and my crazy. No doubt about it. So like by all means,
Yeah,
take
we
the
got all
show
the
because
time. You're
I'm
right.
fascinated.
And
I'm
another
fascinated.
thing. I'm kidding. What? Does that make sense? What do you think about some of that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can definitely, agree to that. Like we're just like you said, regardless if you're following or studying astrology or not, like it's still playing out. It's still happening. Even if you have no idea about transits and the new moon that's about to arrive, it's still happening. It's still affecting you. We've all heard like, must be a full moon, right? We're going in new moon, but like for a full moon, we're all affected by it, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's some other, like, no, literally, scientifically proven. The moon is moving the water and the waves and all the things. And guess what? We are a majority water. So that means we are also being affected. And that's why you can start to notice some little shifts between people when it comes to the full moon. So just these little things that we already just like, put into our terminology that we may not even have a full awareness of like, why do we say these things? And they're
take it one
old,
step
ancient
further.
things.
One step
Please do.
further. What if taking the idea that we are all divinely created and we're divinely creative, like I was saying, what if it's not even just that it's going to happen? What about if you pay it attention? What if, even if astrology isn't true, you are able to take the spiritual concepts of what it is saying is going on in your life and using your creative brain to make something that you would not have thought of before without the prompting? Do you see what I'm saying? And that's where it comes into like conscious and active control of your life. And astrology is just a really good modality and lens for you to think about the entirety of your life in some really strong and powerful ways, because you're thinking about spots of your life that may have been a blind spot to you. If I don't have any career ambitions, then I might be ignoring the things that are going on in the career section of my chart. But just bringing my awareness to them, it inspires creative reflection that you can start beginning to sculpt your masterpiece. I don't know what's with me in this creativity thing that I'm on right now, but it's what I got right now. So we're just gonna keep doing it.
I mean, listen, creativity, like, there's a lot of people that I literally, because I attract a lot of artists and musicians just naturally when I'm just out and about in real life, y'all. You have to go outside. But I'm always asking you, like, what is your music? What is your artistry? And they're, oh, no, I'm not. I'm this, that, and the other. But I love to dance. Or I love to, like, it'll be like something that they're really into, like artistry, right? Even though it doesn't mean like that's your career. It's definitely something that's this other aspect of you, because this kind of goes into like my thoughts of like, using logic and creativity, like, that heart-centered, heart-led, like, there's some of us that are like immediately like, we're just logic leaning, like brain, make it make sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But even still, where like more logic leaning, we absolutely have to bring in creativity to bridge that gap. And same with those who are in that creative space, that creative mindset, we have to use logic to make it make sense, right? And to execute. Or then we're just spiraling, and then we're this goes back to like, again, we're not sitting in our shit, right? Because we're still avoiding some aspect. Like, I don't want to think too hard on that. Like, oh, like I'm not that kind of creative. I don't do that.
Well, and here's my thing. Like someone like me, I am not good at drawing, but and I'm very logical. But there's a creativity that's the end result of my logic. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing, like for anyone who doesn't consider themselves creative, that's just bullshit. If you are able to like I had a reading the other day that, guess what, was about creativity. I swear these people are just coming in for a reading about them, and it's literally just my own journey. But part of that reading was like, okay, let's get the construct of creativity down notch. It is about seeing a blank canvas and imposing your will upon it. Right? That's an aspect of creativity. It doesn't matter what I fucking create. If I grab yellow paint in my palms and just sling it at the canvas, I've created something. If you create an Instagram page, you've created something. If you file an LLC, you've created something. All of these things are aspects of creation because, like, that is the divinity of who we are as people, right? Is just the fact that we can think of things that are not yet to come, but will them into existence through our manifestation, through our labor, through our discipline, through our practice. All of these things in our entire life, we spend imposing our will and also having imposed wills on us. You see what I'm saying? So it's just like we find that creative ground that says, here's what's in my head of what I will to happen, of what I intend to create. Whether that's a social thing, whether that's a career thing, whether that's, anything, you're still performing the act of creation. And that's what makes us different than any other species that we know of on the world, at least to some extent.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I obviously there's like a few ways I resonate with this, right? So like I didn't know about like me having Chiron in my 10th house in Gemini, right? And like that's huge for what we're doing right now. But I also struggled with being shy. There's many aspects around communication for me about how this amazing gift that I have. I'm like, but I'm shy and I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be heard. So like, I'm not using any of these gifts. I'm not using any of these, aspects that are showing up in astrology that will be like greatly beneficial for me in my career, in me creating something that I actually want. But I had to do the work, and I did do a lot of work physically, like action, doing uncomfortable things for myself. Very uncomfortable. But with the goal, the first goal is like, I just actually do want some friends I can actually go get a drink and get some food with. That was the first main little bullet point. And then they expanded into something much greater and grander as far as like creating community and finding community and continuously meeting and connecting other people to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never,
that's divine. That's creation. You're creating connections.
Exactly. And mind you, like I didn't know I was doing all this stuff. I didn't know anything about my astrology. I had no idea. Yeah. And when I got my astrology reading for my first astrology reading, I didn't even want to read astrology. I was like, I don't want to even go down this path. It's a lot. Looks super complicated. It's not like it's like super easy. There's a lot of layers to it, but yeah, again, using it as a tool and a resource to, just let me focus on some things to give me a little bit more clarity or something. Let me dive in deep to understand, how this realistically could be impacting me today. Like, is this true for me? Because not everything in astrology is going to resonate with you.
Yeah.
And some of it is just like, oh, like it's just not part of my life. Fine. But then other things are just like, again, we're not aware and we cannot see it. Like if I was reading something that said, oh, you're supposed to be this amazing speaker and you're going to reach communities and do all these things, I'd been like, yeah, nah, because of where I was at.
Yeah.
Completely dismiss it.
Well, and that's where we get into like, and here's where the it's a lot of layers and trying to explain it in an hour, probably not going to work. But here's what I can say. Let's take your Chiron in the 10th that you were talking about. So For those who don't know, for those who are unfamiliar with astrology language, Chiron is an asteroid. And it is an asteroid that astrologers pay attention to because what we notice is wherever Chiron is in your chart, there is a theme in that area of life that we call the wounded healer energy. So the wounded healer, everyone has it. You're not special for having a Chiron placement. I'm sorry to tell you, everyone's got it. But where it is in your chart and how it's unique to you, now that can be pretty special. That can be pretty cool. So Chiron as an energy is the wounded healer. Mythically, he was a centaur who was immortal, but also poisoned with an arrow that the poison never. Oh, let me say that again. He was wounded by an arrow that had poison on it, and that poison lives in his body eternally. That's the best way to say it. So he's become so familiar with his pain throughout his eternal lifespan that he knows how to work with his pain in a very intimate way. Now, reading something like that in astrology can be very dangerous. And here's why. Because if I'm an uninformed and not creative astrologer, right, then I could say, oh, that just means your career's never going to be what you want it to be. And it means that you're going to have that wound there and you're going to have to live with it for the rest of your life because the 10th house, sorry, I didn't explain that. The 10th house in Ebony's chart, any 10th house represents your career. That's what we're saying. So I could say like, oh, you're going to have a really hard time with that. Or I could be creative and you could be creative and we could see, okay, what could this point be saying? What can we work with on this point constructively? Because if Chiron is the wounded healer and that wounded healer energy lives in your 10th house of career, it's almost like you're called to be a healer. And in order to be a healer, you have to understand pain, right? So there's a flip side to that narrative that you have to consciously be looking for. And that's why it's so important for it's so important for us to use astrology responsibly, to know how to work with it responsibly, to understand the belief system of those who founded it, and to also use it in that context because that's how you reach its highest potential.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Because yeah, I've definitely heard like, oh, I have this, I'm this sign, and so it's just doom and gloom for me, nothing I can do. I was like, that's not true. It
It's
goes back to
bullshit.
just like we can create our own reality,
Yeah.
right? And again, it's a tool. It's not a death sentence. It's not like this is you forever and ever, ever. I would say, sure, there are definitely aspects like, yeah, this is showing up. This is you all day, every day. Even for me, I was like, I don't resonate being a Virgo. I had a lot of struggle with it, like reading a lot of horoscopes. It's just because of the way that Virgo kept being described as like this, extremely neat freak, organized person, and controlling. Not to say like I am all these things, but it actually shines the highest for me in my mind.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in the physical. But then guess what? As like my son, right, is in the 12th house. So it makes a lot of sense for it to not necessarily be in the physical realm for me.
Absolutely.
So
And
yeah.
here's what I'll say, how do you want to go about this? Do you want to go through like what the planets represent? Or do you want to talk about the philosophy behind astrology? Because that'll take us two very different ways.
Let's talk about the planets. Let's just talk about the energy of the planets and such like that.
Yeah. So let's start with the sun. So I see the sun, for example, instead of saying this is who you are, I like to paint a mythic story behind that. So this is who you can become. And there's a lot more excitement when you voice it like that.
Oh,
Who
like the
can you
hero's
become?
journey.
Yes, exactly. It is the hero's journey. And one of the ways that I look at the chart is I see the ascendant, which is the rising sign. That's when you were born, the sign at the easternmost horizon is what we're looking at. that placement is like who you are. That is like default hardwired programming of who you are from the second you leave your mama's womb. And it doesn't mean that you just come out blazing like that sign, but it's just in your daily interactions, in the way that you connect with people. People notice those qualities about yourself, but we don't necessarily operate with our own rising sign leading the way. We use the sun. The sun, therefore, is the representation of ego. Okay, so let's get some disclaimers out of the way. Ego is not a bad thing. You can have an ego, and that's okay. Some people are called to have big egos, and that is okay. Ego can be destructive, yes, but it is not inherently bad or evil. Cool? So, with that being said, the sun as the source of ego represents how we see ourselves. Think about it like this. When you're walking into a room of strangers with a dream in your heart, right? And you're going to that networking event or you're meeting other folks, you are going to come face to face with all kinds of people and receive a lot of criticism. That criticism can feel very disconnecting from who you actually are, or they could be spot on. That's another reality. But a lot of the times we find ourselves in these situations where we're like, this person sees me this way, this way, this way. And that's just not necessarily true. Most of the time, they're picking up your rising sign or another planet that you're like adamantly focusing. Like if I'm cussing someone out, they're seeing my Mars. You know what I mean? Like they're seeing my Mars and that's what they see. But if I'm just vibing, they're probably going to see my rising sign before they see the sun. Now, that is where we open up the sun's potential because the sun in astrology is so poorly spoken about. It is awfully spoken about. They're like, the sun is just who you are. It's your life force. It's your radiance. It's your energy. But what the fuck does that mean? Like, what does
Oh
that
my
mean?
gosh, break that down. Put it in English. Make it make sense.
Do you see what I mean? I'm like, okay, so the sun represents the divine creator going all the way back, the divine creator that exists inside of you. People do not see you because to you, you are your ego. You are the potential of everything that you could create. You see that? So it's like they're not seeing that sun because that sun exists in here. In here, it doesn't exist out. They see the rising sign. So, like, a lot of people get hung up on the sun because they think that, well, that's not my sign. I'm not like that. So astrology is BS. Cool. Fair. If you don't connect with your sun, that's a really big missing part of your astrology. But there are reasons for it, like the sun in a 12th house, for example, the sun in the 6th house, the sun in the 8th house. Those are like notoriously bad spots to have your sun because it's out for reasons that are hard to explain without getting too geeky. It's not visible to the rest of your chart. Things have to be visible to the ascendant, to your rising, in order for them to be seen. And there are certain angles or aspects that we look at that makes the sun more visible. But, right, like to discredit the sun as just who you are is so lackluster. It's really like the highest potential of who you could become. And, we go from there.
I mean, it's funny because I am a Virgo, sun and rising, and I'm so like, I don't really believe this. But for me, it was more so about finding out that I have this Sag moon that's rolling around, and it just kind of it impacts me, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, and am I just rapid firing off now? Sorry, like, is there more? I'm like, now the moon. No, but the sun represents this life force energy. It represents this divine creator in you. The moon, and also I'll point out because it'll be important when we talk about the moon, the sun represents qualities or aspects of the divine masculine. It is eternal. It is life-giving. It is the warmth that imposes itself on things to give life. You can see the masculine, like, yes, there we go. Get that sunlight in, girl. So then when we get to the moon represents something completely different. And it is a side of us that exists, but it's not a side of us that we consciously think about. Because what the moon truly represents, at least in my branch of astrology, is the conditions and requirements that we were or were not met with that made us feel safe as a baby and a child. So we are most connected in to our moon whenever we are young, because we are understanding and learning Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that starts with the need for security and comfort and acceptance. And that mother's love energy, whether or not you were raised by a mom, it's the same energy of unconditional acceptance and love. And what are the things or the qualities that have to be in my life for me to feel safe growing up? So if you think of someone with a Gemini moon loves being in Gemini. That's a whole nother topic, but a Gemini moon is super valuable because what it's telling you about yourself is that at some level, curiosity was a prerequisite for you to feel safe. It's not just about how your mom was, though it can very well be how your mom was. There are plenty of astrologers who argue that the moon represents mom in your life and how mom was, but I'm not necessarily interested in that because I can't control my mom, right? I can only control me. So if I look at what were my needs of security, I have a Cancer moon. I was a mama's boy. I can tell you that much. Cancer represents mom as well. I was a mama's boy. I wanted closeness. I wanted comfort. When I went home at the end of the night, I didn't want to party and make a lot of noise. I wanted there to be safety and peace. I wanted privacy. I wanted protection. And all of those are representations of Cancer as an energy, right? With the Sagittarius moon, exploration is a really big prerequisite for your need for security. And again, it's not saying, oh, you were very explorational. Is that the word? You were
Explorative.
very explorative as a kid. That can very much not be true. And the
It
reason
actually
is,
was very much true for me. And I
period.
do have Sag in the fourth house. My Sag moon is in the fourth house. So it's like there's Cancer energy there as
Yeah.
well. So
And let's get, just for the record, so planets are what? They're the thing, right? So if we're talking astrology, the planet is the thing we're talking about. The sign the planet is in, that's the adjective. And then the house that it's in, the houses, as Ebony's been talking about, are the areas of life in which you will encounter those circumstances the most, right? So if Ebony's has a Sagittarius moon in the fourth house, so that tells me Ebony is emotionally connected to the feeling of home, to ancestry, to roots, to anything like that. That doesn't mean she's only going to experience her emotions in home life, but it is telling me that she is going to feel most secure when she's at home. She's going to feel safe at home. And then adding Sagittarius to it, and remember, here's the pipeline. Moon is the thing we're talking about: comfort, stability, security, and childhood conditioning. The sign, Sagittarius, is the explorer. It is a fire sign. It is a mutable sign. So it's like fireworks, meaning that it's about ideas, exertion of those ideas, and creating an all encompassing truth, right? And then you move on to the house part of that. And the fourth house is the house that we identify as being relevant to the home, roots, foundations, ancestry, private life, anything in that domain. Does that make sense, just to clarify it for folks?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, like just because you have the placement doesn't mean you experience a positive end of it. There's a very big reality there that also says, okay, a kid who spends his childhood in a cage because of a certain government could have a Sagittarius moon. Sorry, we're getting heated very quickly. But that kid also has a Sagittarius moon that wants to explore, that wants to create, that wants to feel comfort in that way, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that he's being met with those conditions. It means that that desire for safety and security exists in him just like it exists in all of us. So, there are so many ways that a chart can actualize that it's really shitty for giving specifics. And that's what I have to keep going back to is like every sign has a virtue and a shadow, multiple of them. So it's like you're experiencing all of these energies on a spectrum. And then it just depends on what that person has lived in their experiences that has gotten them on what side of that spectrum, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Want to also bring up harmonic astrology to Moses as well, because I brought it up a few times. The astrologer that read me like freaking too crazy, too specific, but there's also removing zodiac signs from
And
it and just full expression of the planets. And they're really talking about 3 planets or more to get a more greater understanding. But I love exactly what you said because, yeah, I mean, I did actually move a lot. Both my parents were in the military. And so it's like, I'm saying like, I'm shy. I'd much rather be at home. I definitely feel safe and secure there. But I also have this really strong desire to see and explore other things.
yes, and
And
I mean,
I did live that. Yeah.
and look, even here right now with the podcast, you're living it. You're sitting at home talking about philosophy, which is the most Sag Moony thing to do. Especially when it's in the 4th house. So it's incredibly relevant, but that doesn't mean everyone's going to have that same experience, And I guess that's the
Exactly.
point that I'm trying to drive home. But yeah, so then we have this idea then. So the moon really important in childhood. We experience our moon sign very viscerally there. When we're uncomfortable, when we're insecure, we cry, we pitch a fit, we express our needs. The parents do or don't do their job in making sure that that child's needs are met. And if they do it well, then we come out with a well-developed moon sign. Now, I am a child of trauma, so I do not have a well-developed moon sign. So let's be devil's advocate on the other side because that's a side that I know. When you're not met with your needs, when there are conditions placed upon those needs, right? We still throw our tantrums of the moon, but in a different way. When we're an adult, it might not come by me throwing a tantrum, but it might come from me being a vengeful motherfucker, right? But the reality is that part of me is brought out because my conditions of security are not being met. And your childhood journey of how you got the thing that you needed, if you pitched a fit every time that you didn't get what you needed, those are the qualities of the moon that you carry into your adult life, right? So it's a very complex thing to talk about the moon, but so far where we're at, rising sign is you. The sun is higher self, and a good keyword or summary for the moon that I use regularly is that is your subconscious self. That is the you
Yeah.
that comes out that when you need to be protected.
Yeah. And it's like, I've been just really sitting with the thought of like, there's a lot of us that are being ruled by our 7-year-old self because of the condition, which is like, I'm like, I don't want to be run by 7-year-old Ebony. That's not good. That's not a good look. So again, sitting in this stuff of, diving into your subconscious, the awareness it's so important, so key. And that's absolutely all things of the moon. We need the moon though. It rules
Yes.
us more ways than we realize it completely unconsciously. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that we think are acting out a certain way towards us individually, that may not actually be true. It is absolutely unconscious and they have no idea.
Yeah,
So
we
I'm not
don't
even gonna get into
recognize. Yeah, and there are so many factors beyond the moon that can like accompany that. And that's the thing, like it's not to say the moon single-handedly defines your emotions. Like rage is ruled by Mars, but these archetypal energies that exist within you, they are exchanging ideas in you consciously or unconsciously. And there are times where certain energies even take planets out of it for those who are new to it. There are times where specific energies rule your life more than others. There are times for sadness. There are times for anger. There are times for action. There are times for reflection. And that's really, when we talk about astrology in the deepest sense, it's a symbolic language to explain that process of how these parts are interacting with each other. And even just the thought of pondering them, whether you're a newbie to astrologer or you're advanced, pondering it is the act of doing astrology.
yeah, beautiful. I talk about the remaining planets because I know we can talk about
As
we
I'm
can talk
like
about
moving
this
in my
forever.
as I'm like moving in my chair. I know there's so much. This is like my topic of interest for or it was for a really long time. So then we get to Mercury's domain. Now Mercury is a big deal and it is ignored. So many times Mercury is ignored in the chart. It can't get too far away from the sun, right? Because if you're looking at the skies, Mercury is closer to the sun than we are. So on a chart, it's never far away from the sun because we're looking at it, right? From an Earth-centric view. So we look at the sun, we see Mercury close by. Now, what is Mercury? Mercury represented Hermes in Greek mythology, the messenger of the gods. But even further than that, in alchemy, Mercury was the highest god. Mercury was the superior god because Mercury represented that aspect of consciousness and awareness. So, Mercury, Hermes, Loki, all of these like mythic figures, the ones that I've studied, there are plenty across the board. Um, all of these gods were psychopomps. And what a psychopomp is someone who takes the living to the realm of the dead and back and forth. So, like Hermes, Mercury, Loki, they were gods who could travel to the underworld where folks could not. Now, we just talked about the moon as subconsciousness. We talked about the solar as consciousness and ego, right? We have our subconscious. Cut that part out. So, with that, here comes Mercury, the one who can go between the realms. So you have your moon function, which is telling you like what you subconsciously need. It interacts with your consciousness through the function of Mercury, taking stuff that is unconscious or subconscious and bringing it into the light, and vice versa, taking the external stimuli like this conversation, processing it is an action of Mercury. And then when it sits with yourself, when you sit with yourself, or when it sits with your subconscious and how you feel about it, that is Mercury's role as a psychopomp, then taking that information down so you can process it and truly process it in a way that creates action for yourself or gives you a different insight or motivation. So Mercury, incredibly important. In a reading, it's really boring to read because a lot of the times it's same as the sun sign, because it's close to it. But that doesn't mean Mercury's function isn't important. And Mercury, as the fastest moving planet in the solar system, it's always doing shit. It is always doing shit. So it's like talking about Mercury isn't necessarily the best bang for your buck if you're trying to like just get money to understand your chart. There are other archetypes that are like more profound, But what Mercury does is essential, and it's essential in transit work, which is like what's the astrology of right now versus the birth chart, and how your Mercury and the transit Mercury interact with other planets is literally like astrologers trying to paint this is what you're thinking about in a way. That might be dumbing it down, but do you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. And on top of that, just mind blown. Mercury definitely has a strong handle on me in a lot of different ways. So I did not know that that was the sign of a cycle pump, and which makes a lot of sense for me right now, which I'm gonna definitely have to send my shit a little bit more about that and how that's resonating for me. But it's very illuminating because I know I have a lot of Mercury aspects.
Yeah.
And again, Mercury communication, where I'm like, I struggle with it's all up and down my chart. So it's
Yes.
huge. And
Yeah.
even I would be curious about, you talk about these, mythical representations, but I also think about Gabriel as well as a divine messenger as well.
Oof.
Ew. And
Yeah, 100%. Any culture, any like historical culture, had this archetypal figure, or a lot of them did, to say this idea of a messenger god. And like, you're right, that's not even a point that I talked about, but Mercury rules communication because again, it's the idea of bringing abstract thought into actualization through language, right? And because of language, we're able to do that psychopomp process just in a different way. But yeah, all that's Mercury, Mercury, Mercury. If you have aspects to your Mercury in your chart, if you have other planets getting involved with Mercury, it flavors the way you communicate. And it also can dampen, expand, exaggerate, say what you're really passionate about communicating about. All of those things are ways that your Mercury talks.
beautiful. I'm gonna move on because we can stay stuck
This
right
will be
there
2
all
hours,
day.
yeah. We could go through like the 7 classic planets, and try to end there because the outer planets, that's a conversation for another day, I can tell you.
Part
But
two. Part two.
part 2, right? Anything else before we keep going?
And no, I'm gonna let us move on from Mercury to
Okay.
yep.
I'm on one today. Let's go.
I
So
love it.
Venus is next. Now, Venus is a very misrepresented planet. What Venus is the archetype of connection. Now, I know we always talk about Venus as the archetype of love, and that is not untrue. It's not untrue. But how redundant, you know what I mean? To just say like Venus exists as this archetype of love. So if I really want a boyfriend, I need to go look at my Venus and I need to go to my chart to see a person to tell me how I get love, and they're going to tell me about my Venus and I'm going to feel good and hope it works. Like that's the end result of using Venus in that way, which is why like I don't necessarily Venus in that sense because I'm more focused on spiritual growth through astrology. So Venus is the great connector. It is the divine feminine in a lot of ways. It shares that with the moon. Um, Venus represents attraction. It represents seduction. And these are all things that exist outside of the context of romance. We all try to seduce people. Every single one of us tries to seduce people every single day.
At childbirth, we do. So pay attention to me. Look at me.
Yes, 100%.
Children act out a certain way to get attention, to get attraction. It is innate.
Yes, 100%. And Venus represents attraction in that way. That means if I want you to like me, I'm going to turn on parts of my personality that will make you like me. But vice versa, I also think about Venus through this like Aphrodite sense, where it's like Aphrodite didn't do shit for anyone but herself. Like if you're looking to your Venus sign and you're in a codependent relationship, like you done fucked up, friend. Like I'm sorry, codependency is not a quality of Venus. It could be a quality, it could be a poorly placed quality of Venus, but it's by no means what the archetype is supposed to look like. Venus also represents in that way the things that you find beautiful about yourself. and it represents the things that you adorn yourself with. So like, think of it this way. If I have a friend who's really, really funny, really, really interesting, they're really kind, I really want to be friends with them. I'm using my Venus as a way to try to connect with this person, but I'm trying to connect with this person because I value what they represent. And that valuation process is also a part of Venus. So my Venus is in Leo. That means whenever I try to connect with people, I go bigger. I'm more over the top than I actually am. I'm very quiet and personal, but if you see me in public, I'm going to be smiley. I'm going to be bubbly. I'm going to be attention grabbing. I'm going to make some audacious statements that I probably don't honestly believe. So that's a Leo thing, right? But I'm saying it just to get a reaction because Leo's the performer, baby.
Are you
And
getting a reaction out of me right now? I'm gonna let you finish your statement, but I'll be like, okay, this is making more sense on why the two of us are doing this podcast together. Go ahead, continue. Yes.
so all of those are qualities of Leo that I express through my Venus sign when I'm trying to engage with someone. And the flip side of that is it's also what I value in others. And it's what I value in others because if they can appreciate what I'm putting out, that means they understand it in some way, right? That means they've got an idea of what I'm about. So that Venus process, it goes both ways. But I always tell people if you want to use relationships in Venus correctly, it is about seeing them as a jewel on your neck. It is like every connection, every person that you meet is a person that you have found beautiful, and you include them into your life as a way to show how beautiful your life is. Because remember, Aphrodite didn't do shit for herself. It was always an expansion or an expression of her beauty. Now, we have more. Sorry, I'll be quick on it because I know we're running long. But like Venus is Venus also rules like legalities because that's a form of connection. Venus rules like any sort of artistic endeavor. So arts, human affairs, legalities between mankind that we're hoping don't result to violence. All of those things are kind of managed through Venus. Venus is expressed in moments of peace. And that's like the best way that I can explain it. And then we're met with the different archetype, which is Mars, which is what we use when peace is not an option, when war has to be had in some aspect. We good? Keep going.
Yeah, keep going. I mean, listen, all I was gonna say, and if you know a little bit about astrology, you'll get this where I'm like, what? So my Venus is in Cancer in the 11th house. My partners, this is my twin flame, if you know anything about that. My partners of Venus is in Leo. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, this is starting to get really, really interesting of like, oh, Moses is literally matching up on these things because my partner's moon sign is also, he has a Cancer moon as well. So I was like, wow, there's just a lot going on here. But it's this beautiful connection that I see that we have, and we can just speak each other's language, without like very little, like, I know your whole life. I know we're exploring and understanding, and yet here we are connecting at this level. And it just goes to show you, it's like, there's this energy that we can just, feel within one another. Again, the astrology is doing the same regardless if you're aware of it or not. It's right there. So I was like, yeah.
And there's so much to be said. I mean, I could go on for hours, but I completely agree where it's like there's so much potential for connection through our Venus sign, and understanding it really at its best, it's helping you understand what you value and what you like are drawn to creatively. So like if you use this, people with strong Sun Venus combinations, usually really good creatives. Really, really good in the artistic realm. Any sort of aspect between Sun and Venus, even the hard ones, can create some really interesting content, and some really interesting artistic expressions. So then when we're moving on to Mars, yes, fighting, warfare, battle, anger, still divine, right? And this is where so many people are disconnected with masculine divinity, is that sometimes there are wars worth fighting for. Sometimes there are battles that have to happen. And really, like, if you think about Mars as the function of a knight, like a medieval knight, Knight, you'll start to really understand the idea, because what Mars says is there's something that I believe in that no one's going to take away from me. There's a virtue or a value that I will fight for fiercely. And Mars, therefore, describes when we fight, and it also describes how we fight with the context of its sign. More than this, Mars represents individuation. So like where Venus is like, oh, we're going to connect together, Mars as a byproduct shows you how you can be different, and it's how you push for your difference to be expressed. So there's a lot that goes into that, and that isn't solely ruled by Mars, but Mars is definitely a function of it. But with all of that being said, a lot of folks could do a lot more work in getting in touch with their Mars. Yeah.
Agreed. Like right now, we really are just seeing the expressions of the shadow aspects of the quote unquote divine masculine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even for me, trying to like seeing myself as a leader, because like I have a fiery Mars too, like a Mars and Leo, and so like shy and Mars and Leo, like that's not expressed. That's then suppressed. And now that's coming out and expanding. And it's like, I have to give myself permission, because again, like this is a binding. I've bound myself, and then society has bound me. And then I'm seeing like, oh, what we're seeing expressed is like these very icky things when it comes to the masculinity aspects, right?
Yeah.
Because like, oh, the fiery, the loudest person in the room, like the bombastic, like I'm pushing through, I'm fighting for this. But what are you really fighting for? What are these values that you're using it for? Who is it, that you're helping or, hurting? And it's just understanding, like, the divine masculine at the end of the day for me is like, the protectors.
Mm-hmm.
The protectors.
Absolutely.
Right? But if we're seeing power used in a way that has nothing really to do with protection, now it's just shadowy, not so great. And you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to do that power thing. Like I don't want to embrace the Mars, because look at it. And that's how we've seen Mars realistically being played out for millennia, which is unfortunate. But
and here's the thing, right? Like, I'm going to sound very amoral here, and I understand that, so don't act like I'm thinking this is morally okay, because I recognize that it's not. But I also constantly think about the role of Mars on the grander scale of human expression of what story is being told right now. And Mars is kind of the antagonist in a way of saying, like, we don't always have a good answer for why violence erupts. We don't always have a good answer for why this like human propensity to fight each other exists. But I'm a firm believer that friction is what creates progress. It's not just through universal love. I believe the function of Mars is a function of love at the highest level, right? Because I guess it's just a matter of like how you define what love is. Because if you see love as just this positive emotion that's romantic by nature, then yeah, Mars isn't a part of that. But what if love really just is the process of reunification from many to one, right? And we express our differences in like all of these different ways. And when they merge together, there's friction, there's battle, there's fighting, and there's a resolution. And there is progress that has been made once those wars are over. Now, I don't necessarily think that war is always good, not by any means, but you can't ignore that fundamentally we're talking about disagreements that have serious ramifications. Like, what did it mean to fight a war in the Holocaust? At what point did we decide that that was the most divine thing to do? In what way did we decide that that was the most righteous way to move forward? And also, you think about the other functions of Mars, which says me, 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 me. So what did we gain from going to war? How did I express my selfishness by moving into war? What ulterior motives did I have to pursue that if I really, really want land or oil? Oops. You know, there's a lot of different functions of it. So it's not to say that war is inherently divine in that way, but it's just about understanding that at least in the standpoint of fighting for your values and the things that you believe in, Mars has a very divine function.
Oh, yeah. And again, that's like just really going under the hood and really understanding, what is this motivation that's driving, this fiery, because all of us have it. All of
Yeah.
us have a Mars placement. And there's something that's pushing on you that more than likely it wants to be expressed in some way or the other, And when I think about our current landscape, I say this over and over again, like, it needed to happen so people can see the truth. Because sometimes people just want to hear and see whatever they want to see.
Yep.
I can't help but still think about the Matrix. But
Yep.
that's essentially what it is. And in order for the truth to fully come is when there is desperation and there's an understanding on both sides, because this is spiritual warfare too, that the reality that we have been living in for millennia, mostly first world countries, is coming to a close. And what we're seeing expressed is literally the desperation expressing itself, where they're not even trying to hide any agendas, right? So it's like, oh, well, no, they just want this and they want the economy to be great and such. But really, it's just like, I want to control the federal government. There is extreme dictatorship overtones that have been there from the jump, and people continue to make excuses for that, right? But then we're watching how everything's playing out.
Yeah.
It's just like full power and control. We want to take it back and burn it all down. I want to suppress and to make sure that you're living in scarcity, and we're going to blame everyone else. And so you all can continue to fight amongst yourselves about nothing that we even need to fight about at all.
Yep. Oh, 100%. I had a thought. Hold on. Because it was a good one too. Don't say anything. I'm sorry. I really got to think. Here we go. I agree. And here's what I think people need to understand is that your anger is a cue for what you value. Your anger is a cue for what you value. If something riles you up, that means there is a part of your peace that has been disturbed. That means that there is something important to you that has been violated. And no matter how insignificant it is, someone cuts me off on the highway, I want to cut a bitch. Why? Well, I have Mars in Libra. Mars in Libra values diplomacy, fairness, conversation, seeing others as equals. It's about fighting to be seen as an equal, right? So if somebody violates the law that I'm trying to follow, the way that I live my life, and cuts me off on the fucking highway, I'm going to be mad as hell. And guess what? I'm probably going to flip them off, and I'm probably going to like try to get in front of them, and I'm going to try to make their life as annoying as possible so that I'm the nuisance and the pest that never went away. And that's the goddamn truth. I'm sorry. I'm not saying I'm 100% healed, people. I'm saying that this is a function of Mars for better or worse, right? But it's like when you're angry, you start to understand what you value. And the more you understand and work with your anger and understand the values that are there and what your needs are, the better you learn how to express that in a mature way. So working with your Mars is important because you have to know how to fight and what's worth fighting for. So a lot to be said there. But
so much.
yeah.
On that note, because
I know.
the other aspect of that is, why are we fighting? Like, why is this triggering us, right? Because we have to also understand that there is still 7-year-old self that is ruling some of this shit as well. And there is definitely many thoughts, ideas, opinions that have been imprinted on us that tell us, if this happened, you should be angry. If that happens, you should react and respond in this way. So there's still a lot of conditioning. And so you really have to bring in all these different aspects of yourself to understand, why are you moving, thinking, creating, all these things. Why? Why am I doing XYZ? Why is this triggering me?
Yeah.
Is it all the time? Is it every person? Is it just...
Oof. And see, like, what you're pointing to, like, stands in its own validity. What I can add to it is that I see that all the times in people's charts. If your sun is square the moon, if you have a harsh aspect between your sun response and your, not moon, sorry, your sun response and your Mars, you are going to have difficulty because the anger that you have, the frustration that you have, isn't seeing eye to eye with who you really feel that you are, right? So there's a lot of the times, like Moon-Mars conjunctions or Moon-Mars conjunctions, usually like some level of hot-headedness there. Sorry if you have it. That's a very, very quick way of saying it. But usually it just means that when we're not feeling secure, there's like a quick attachment. But if you have a disconnect, if you have a harsh aspect or an aspect in which your sun, moon, and Mars don't see each other, or they're arguing with each other, then it's like you're constantly at war with yourself, with what you value, what you believe, and what makes you feel safe, right? So like a lot of people's anger is misplaced. And that's the easiest way that I can say it without astrology. If you skipped everything that I said in astrology, a lot of people's anger is displaced. But like sometimes it's written to be that way, right? Sometimes it's the process of friction, of anger, of frustration that's going to lead you to the result that you want or cause a sense of self-discovery. Like my Mars, I used to hate it. Mars in Libra is like a weak Mars. It's always nitpicky. It's always argumentative, et cetera, et cetera. But then I became a leader. And then people were actively trying to impose their will because they didn't want to follow a certain rule that I had or a certain way that I did things. So that Mars function was very important for me to express that it's going to be my way, fucker. We're not doing this your way. And so it's like, you know, people need that Mars placement. And that like fighting instinct has to be there in some cases because of authority. If you have authority, you have to know how to work with your Mars, point blank, period, you know? So lots to be said from there, but do we feel like we're in a good spot to move on to Jupiter? Or do we stop here?
Let's stop here. I think we'll have time to do Jupiter and then do all the outer planets, because I feel like Jupiter is like kind of like this in between of...
You're so right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and that, my friends, is all of the personal planets. When we're talking personal planets, we're talking from Sun up into Mars. We start moving into a different category that we unfortunately did not have time for this episode. that we can explore a future day, which is from Jupiter to Pluto and everything in between there. But yeah,
Well,
I think the biggest thing that I can summarize is like every discovery, everything that I've said about astrology has been a learning point for my own development, right? So it's like it's never meant to come across as a super intimidating thing. It's about you forming a better and more cohesive relationship with yourself. And astrology is a really strong modality to do that with. If you have the right teacher, if you have the right tools, if you ever need resources, you hit me up on Instagram. I don't care who you are. There are always books. There are always things that you can explore. That's at jupiters.market for my social. Again, jupiters.market. Book a session with me today. Yeah, that's all I got.
nice plug. Thank you so much, Moses. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna have to send this, and I'm probably gonna have to do another freaking reading with you because, like, no, now we got to go under the hood a little bit more about these Mercury and Mars placements, but especially because I have it in 12th house, which is an outer planet. So you're gonna have to come back for part 2 when we dive into this because, yeah, this is a subject that can bring in so much understanding into self,
Yep.
right? Especially when it comes to sitting in your shed and shadow work, because it gives you just different ways to look at things within yourself that you wouldn't even necessarily question or think about. And that's really what it is. Sitting in your shit is all about asking yourself questions no one has ever taught you to think about, period. Until the next time.
Until next time, the Grand High Witch herself has spoken, Miss Ebony Venice. And with that, we bid you adieu. How do we